It's been more than 13 months since the first COVID vaccine was administered in the U.S. outside of trials, more than 9 months since adults across the board in Massachusetts became eligible to get a shot. And as of this week, 87% of people in the state have gotten at least one vaccine dose. It's a number to celebrate, but also a number many point to declare this is now a pandemic of the unvaccinated, a turn of phrase that implies a choice in that status. But for kids under 5, getting vaccinated still is not an option. And for their parents and caregivers, the pandemic can feel like it's still stuck in neutral. They're weighing infection risks against developmental needs and hoping to get through a full week with childcare intact and without having to quarantine. The accumulated stress led one local mom with young kids to gather fellow parents into a field recently for a so-called primal scream, which attracted plenty of media attention and inspired similar events nationwide, showcasing the collective anger and exhaustion felt by so many. So is all of this inevitable, or could policymakers be doing more? Joining me are GBH News reporter Craig LeMoult and Gladys Vega, Executive Director of Chelsea's La Colaborativa. Thank you both for being here. Gladys, let me start with you. I got a rundown of what the state has done recently to try to ease the burden on parents and caregivers. And there are some big things. Financial relief provided to daycare providers, financial relief also provided to lower income parents, for example. To your mind, what are the biggest things the state could be doing right now to make things better?
So remember that although the state has done a lot, we still have approximately 29,000 children that are excluded because their parents' undocumented status. So imagine, that child tax credit doesn't apply for them. I think that we still need to work on policies that would address the issues every children in the United States. I think that that for Chelsea families, the burden remains not being able to fully go back to work, not having access to childcare, not having children being fully vaccinated because the lack of trust of something so new. So I think all those things play a huge role as we think of creating policies that address the needs of a family in communities like Chelsea.
You and I talked just briefly before this show, and one of the things you mentioned to me was that the state, as you see it, could be making it easier for people to become childcare providers, right? Why would that be valuable, do you think?
So I think it's extremely valuable because if a mom is able to not find a job and she's able to get the skills from the Department of Early Education so that they can get the license to start a child care process, a home child care, why not, and make it available. That way they can, if they have a small children, they can stay home. It's also very, very pricey. Child care is extremely pricey when you go private. I remember my daughter was paying $350 for 3 days a week. And it wasn't like, it wasn't like he was in a Montessori school, but it was that amount of money. So, I mean, if you are a parent and you need to choose between quality daycare and paying the rent, of course, the daycare will be out of the question, and you may have to leave as a younger sibling behind doing the child care.
Right. Whereas if you can find child care, then you can be comfortable about the kid, your child getting good care, and you can go back to work and make money for your family.
Exactly.
Let me bring in, hold these thoughts. Let me bring in Craig LeMoult, who I know has a young child in a daycare or a childcare setting right now. You guys recently experienced firsthand the chaos that COVID can create at this particular moment in time for people like you. What happened to your family, Craig?
Yeah, and I think what happened to us is in no way unusual. And we made it through, certainly. But two things. First of all, a child in my child's daycare class tested positive for COVID, which I think is just happening basically all over the state right now. And he was home for basically about a week as and then needed to get a PCR test that came back negative before he could return to school. So, for us, we're working parents, and that was a bit of a challenge. And we were able to get by. We were able to take some days off and to balance some things. But this is really a challenge, especially for a lot of people who are lower income and don't have the ability to just take a day off. Also, the week after the holidays, the entire daycare program shut down because they didn't have enough teachers who were able to come in to care for the students. And, they were either COVID positive themselves or they had someone in their family who was. And the daycare program just said, that's it. We can't open for this week. Thankfully, it opened up the next week. But I just, talked to somebody at the State Association for Early Childhood Education and Care who mentioned a program in Worcester that has 13 of 15 classes currently closed down because they just don't have the teachers or because of positive tests in classes.
I know the state is about to roll out a change in the way testing is done in daycare settings. What exactly is going to be changing when that happens, either later this month or early February?
Yeah, as of Monday, they're supposed to be rolling out this program. And it's important to note that this is entirely optional for daycares because unlike the K-12 system, this is not a public system of schools. These are, thousands of private businesses who have an option to do something or not do it if they want to. But there's 3 levels to the testing. One actually has been in place since June, which is pool testing. I personally didn't realize that this was even available to daycare since June, but they have had free pool testing available to them in that time. And what's being added as of Monday is rapid antigen tests are being made available. And that'll be done in one of two different ways. One is what they call cohort testing, which is like, for example, when a child in my kid's class tested positive, the other parents can have their kids tested using rapid antigen tests. And if they test negative, they can continue to go in. He wouldn't have to stay home with us like he did that time. That could either be done by the parents at home or the daycare center could choose to do it themselves. And in addition to the cohort testing, there's also symptomatic testing. So if a kid in daycare, has a sniffle, which we know kids in daycare.
Every single kid in daycare has, right.
Yeah. One of the people in the daycare could give a rapid antigen test to that kid or send one home for the parent to do it. I talked to daycares about this, and I think there's a real difference of opinion about whether or not they're even going to do this, how much of the program they're going to take part in. It's really resource intensive. It's a lot for the daycares to train their staff and to make sure that this is done properly. With the pool testing, it's 3 and above, age 3 and above. Under age 3, it has to be done by a nurse. So you'd have to have an in-staff nurse to actually do that kind of thing.
That's the sort of complexity that doesn't even occur to me when I think about a program like this. Gladys, Vega, the point you were making when I brought Craig in a moment ago was the incredibly high cost of childcare. And I remember that from when my kids were that age. It can be brutal. You co-wrote a piece for the Bay State Banner a little while ago, urging state legislators and policymakers to expand the child care tax credit at the state level. Did they act on your request?
So they acted in different parts of the request. It's not fully what we asked for. It's better, but not every child of the families that we serve are able to participate. Many of them are excluded in the process. That is why La Colaborativa, from the families that we serve, we heard it over and over again, that in order for them to sort of like get off unemployment benefits or go back to fully work, they need childcare. So we are trying to put together this childcare co-op that allows for our families to create their own childcare license services so that they're able to do childcare from home. We were forced to think creatively on that because we know that at times a lot of parents cannot able to maintain their childcare because at times if someone gets COVID, all the kids get their daycare may get closed down, or if someone gets COVID at work, she may be sent home and the woman who's taking care of them says, you know what, you're not giving me consistency. I cannot keep my childcare open. So we're trying our best to be extremely creative about also childcare that may have an opportunity where you drop a kid, and it doesn't have to be the regular kid all the time. That way there's a one day drop off. It may be Carmen, the other one may be little Gloria who needs the daycare, but being very creative about how we think about childcare, just because we need to figure out what to do with the services that are not fully provided, especially if we're trying to integrate the community back to work, if we're trying to provide trainings and make sure that our community is able to sustain. Remember, there's a lot of services that were put together during the pandemic. All those services soon will be gone, and it leaves behind a community that is extremely poor and a community with lots of unknowns due to the fact that you never know when you have a new variant that will allow for us to take another step back.
Yeah.
So I think that we're thinking creatively on how do we handle the 29,000 children that have been excluded from not receiving the tax break.
Craig LeMoult, as Gladys was just saying, there is an opportunity at the state level to provide financial relief. There's an opportunity at the federal level, but the Build Back Better package that President Biden wanted to get passed seems to be stuck, pretty much going nowhere in Washington. You are doing some reporting right now in Lawrence, where they're doing some creative things municipally. What are they doing exactly in Lawrence?
Yeah, it is an interesting thing. And as you said, Build Back Better essentially is on hold at the very least. Congresswoman Catherine Clark was talking to people just yesterday in the business community, saying that she was optimistic that this was actually going to get over the finish line. They're breaking it up into the component parts. But at the state level and on the municipal level, there are other attempts at doing this. And in Lawrence, they have expanded the voucher program. So in the state, there is a voucher program that is available to low-income people to help them qualify and pay for childcare. But it's not, it's not available to a lot of people. Right now, if a single parent who makes $45,000 a year does not qualify for this state subsidy for daycare, even though for an infant, it can cost $21,000 a year just to pay for that care. So it's really not available to a lot of people. And what they're doing in Lawrence is they're expanding who's essentially available for that. They used federal grants, and they're using the city budget to pay for childcare for more families. So they've made it so that anybody who falls below 50% of median income, state median income, qualifies for a voucher. And anybody else can get it if how much it would cost them, it goes up to 8% of their income. That's a big issue, right? I
was fascinated by this because I think of it as something that cities and towns don't have control over, but obviously that's not the case. We only have about 45 seconds left. I want to ask each of you very quickly, a bunch of physicians, about 250, signed a letter recently urging the federal government to move quicker when it comes to getting vaccines to younger children. Briefly, about 10 seconds each of you. Gladys, Vega, is there an appetite in Chelsea and among the people you serve to get really young kids vaccinated when it becomes available? And then I'd like to hear from Craig.
Yes, there is. Send them to us and we'll make it happen.
Okay, excellent. And Craig, would you have any hesitation about getting your younger kid the vax when they can?
When the federal government says that it is safe and they're opening it up, absolutely not. I would be thrilled, and I feel like he's vulnerable now, and that would protect him.
All right, Craig LeMoult and Gladys Vega, thank you both. Really appreciate it.